Hello, welcome back to the channel. My name is Lisa Elvin Stoltori, and I'm a genealogist and a passionate traveler. For the last year or so, I have been featuring each fille du roi, the king's daughters, and getting to know their stories. But I wanted to dig a little deeper and go into the filles mariées, which came before. And so that's what we're doing in this episode 6 it is. So we're just starting out. But before we begin, let's have a look at how you can support the channel. Subscribe, like, and notify are very, very important for me to be able to continue to share the content and know that this is something you like. I also have listed in the notes below 3 other ways you can support the channel. One is Ko-fi, Etsy, and also a Patreon, which is a monthly support. Then I have a few people that have been very generous and are supporting the channel that way. So without further ado, let's get started and get to know les filles mariées. So for those of you familiar with Les Filles du Roi, you know that the program began in 1663 and ended approximately 1673. Les Filles Mariées was a much longer space of time, 1634 to 1662 or 3, as the case may be. And but there was only about 200, whereas the filles du roi were over 700 girls. This is between 260 to 270 girls who came across, and they came across almost in a 30-year gap. So you can imagine the impact was much less. However, that being said, these filles mariées are just incredible. They are the true pioneers in many respects because they came across many times alone. They would be recruited by, a church or possibly somebody they knew. It was a very one-on-one kind of thing. So they didn't have all the bells and whistles that the filles du roi had. They just embarked on an adventure that they knew not of. So when you descend from one of these women, I suspect that you also descend from incredible courage and conviction. So let's get to know our fille à marier of this episode. So our fille à marier is Renee Loppe. She is a viewer request. I do not have her in my files. So, and when I got this request, I looked into it and I was like, I have to do this. This is really a powerful story. Not always pleasant, but we will explore her life and what she went through. Let's have a look at Renee and her beginnings. So she was born in 1645 in a town or commune, and you know commune means township, in Saint-Jean-de-la-Motte in France. This is part of the Pays de la Loire region, and it's also part of the département or county of Sarthe. It's a village of about 1,000 people, and the church, Saint-Jean, dates from the 11th century and was remodeled in the 15th and 16th century. And this is on the top, just it really is a farming community, beautiful little village. And this is an aerial view of that town as it exists today. So her parents would both pass away, leaving her an orphan, and she embarked on a ship in 1658. So if we do the math, that makes her about 13 or 14 years of age when she comes to New France as a fille à marier. This was her opportunity. So the gentleman that she would end up marrying, his name was René Vaniquette de Laverdure, and he was born in 1632, making him considerably older. But during that time, 13 or 12 years wasn't a huge amount. In Le Lude in France, which is also part of the Pays de la Loire and also part of the département of Sarthe. So we now know that they come from the exact same place, region and département, county. So they would have presumably not necessarily known each other, but they would know the same kind of things. The Église Saint-Vincent du Lude is from the 16th century, and the origins of the Château du Lude, this is the beautiful castle, dates back to the 10th century. This fortress, flanked by 6 towers, surrounded by a moat, played a strategic role in the medieval ages and the Middle Ages, particularly during the 100 Years' War. And of course, it's an area that you can visit today. So it's just really an amazing place to visit and really, really live history. We know that Jean arrived in Montreal in 1653. So he was there about 5 years before the marriage, giving him ample time to kind of get ready and prepare for a wife. And he was a soldier for sure. He was somebody who was very, very strong and was also somebody who was part of that grande recrue that was recruited by Maisonneuve, Chaumédy, and came across on that boat. So this is their marriage contract. September 16th, 1658 is when they were married, and they were married in Montreal. So they would settle in Montreal. Let's talk a little bit about Montreal. The wonderful city that is Montreal would start off as Ville-Marie by the founder, Paul de Chaumédy, Sœur de Maisonneuve, and was essentially a missionary center. In May of 1642 is the official founding, if you will. This colony would not thrive, and many people in Quebec City and Three Rivers thought it was kind of a folly because it was just like, who's going to ever live on that island, right? They just couldn't imagine. But Chaumédy persevered, and he recruited 100 settlers, which would be known as the Grande Recrue, of which Jean was part of that. One of these small group of people was Marguerite Bourgeois, who would go on to found the Notre Dame congregation, and they really were on their own in Montreal. And even by 1663, Chaumédy established some sort of militia for them because the Gagne soldiers from 1665 have yet to arrive. And Jean actually participated in this militia, if you will. So this little snippet is the 1867 census, where we have Jean Vaniquet, 33, Renee, 22. We have Mathurin, Marie-Nicole, Isabelle, and they have 11 arpents valants, so about 8 or 9 acres of land. They would go on to have 8 children. Mathurin, their firstborn, we do not know what happened to him. We have Marie-Nicole, who marries Louis Ledoux and had 9 children, 8 of whom made it to adulthood. We have Elisabeth, who married first Antoine Duperré and had 3 children, all of whom made it to adulthood. She then married Jean Menard and had 6 more children, all of whom married. She then married Charles François and had 3 children, only one of whom made it. And then we have Hélène, who married Jacques Martimbault and had 4 children, all of whom made it. She then married Jacques Pinet and had 3 children, all of whom made it. We do not know what happened to Françoise, Catherine, or Jean. This is a mystery. Pierre married Marie-Elisabeth Campeau and had 5 children, all of whom made it to adulthood. We will go into why we don't know what happened to these children, but this is a case that I think DNA will prove very useful for, because I think that there's going to be some connections made. And out of these 4 children that we have no knowledge of, there may have been at least 1 or 2 who have a descendancy line. And you'll understand why we lost track of them. So we have Renee, who passes away so suddenly, so fast. March 20th, 1679, before this date. We're not sure of the date. We don't have a death record or a burial record. She was approximately 34 years of age. Just an incredible tragedy for the family. Now let's find out what happens to that family. After her death, shortly after her death, actually, or presumably 6 or 8 months after the last date that we know of, Jean was accused of incest. There are conflicting stories. The incest may have occurred to his wife's sister, but more and more, part of that was an accusation of incest for one daughter and molestation of 2 others. You can imagine what kind of a scandal that was. Our only, blessing is that Renee was not alive to see this. He was condemned to hang. He escaped that. And it was a tragedy and he was banished from the island of Montreal. I'm going to send you guys to an amazing website called The French Canadian Genealogist, and she has written an incredible story about Jean and what he went through. So I've got them in the notes, but suffice it to say that he never really could see his children again. He was banished. He went and was in Quebec. And this is why we do not have a census for 1681, because by 1681 he's gone. He's not anywhere near. And the children, other than the ones who have been married, are in the 1681 census, and we have the descendancy. Those other children were minor children, probably taken by other families, perhaps adopted, or we don't know. We don't know what happened to them. So, anybody that can shed light on this would be an amazing thing. And I really do believe DNA will possibly answer. If there were any descendancy, I believe DNA will find us that at some point. So yes, have a look at that amazing that was written on this scandal. So you can find out a little bit more about exactly what happened in terms of the court case and all of that. Jean would end his life about at the age of 65. He would die in the hospital at Hôtel Dieu in Quebec City. He was penniless, so not a great end to what had until then been a fairly fulfilling and promised life, but he took a different turn. And again, we do not know the circumstances, so I always reserve judgment based when I'm looking at history and indictments and criminal things. I want to believe that it was wrong, but I also believe that these things happened back then as well as they do today. So that is the end of Jean's story, but I just want to share with you that history is not all black and white. So despite, living out his life in poverty and ostracized from his children and family and society, he is still listed on that Le Grand Recru de 1653. So he's still part of that. And so it's like a mixed bag. Here's this, very brave person that came and helped found Montreal and protect it, but also ended up choosing a different path. So very, very sad ending to, like I said, an otherwise promising life. So we only have, according to our French-Canadian ancestors, Thomas J. Laforêt, on page 249, he states that only La Chaise and La Verdure are the two variations of this name. Here are some of the resources I would encourage you to look at. And also, if you have additional resources you'd like me to post here, I'd be glad to do it. Quebec Genealogical E-Society, La Généalogie Québec, which is an amazing website, a monthly that I pay. And Nos Origines, Généalogie du Québec et Amérique Française, free site. Very, very good information on that as well. And then I have a few Quebec focused genealogical society. We have the Quebec Family History Society. We have the French-Canadian Heritage Society of Michigan. We have the American French Genealogical Society based out of Rhode Island, and the American Canadian Genealogical Society. All of these are amazing, websites that can assist you in locating. And also it depends, it helps, depending on what resources they have and where your fellows and ladies came from, that might help as well. And then, of course, I always like to mention the podcast of Sandra Goodwin, Maple Stars and Stripes, an amazing podcast, an inspiration to me always. And so ends episode 6, a very troubling one, to be sure. Renee did not live long enough to see the tragedy that would ensue. Maybe if she had been alive, none of this would have happened. But we will never know. But we thank her. we thank her so much for that contribution and for her sacrifice. And, you know, despite the fact that she only lived to be 34, as of 1729, there were 180 descendants from this couple. And there may be more based on, you know, some DNA research. So despite everything, the line continued. And we bless her memory. We thank her. And we pay homage to the ultimate sacrifice that she made. She did not have an easy life, and her children did not have easy lives, but they persevered and continued, and that's why my viewer is a descendant of this very brave woman, and a very, very, you know, challenging backstory, if you will, but we persevere. We cannot pick who our ancestors are, good, bad, or indifferent, right? So with that, we bless and release. And I will see you on episode 7 of Les Filles Mariées. Until then, au revoir.